I'm Jake Shimabukuro, and you're watching Eclectic Arts Media with my good friend Mark.
Susanna, do you want to do a documentary? And she's like, yes. I'm like, great, here you go.
As always, Mark, it's always an honor to hang out with you and spend this evening with you. And visit with you for dang sure. I really appreciate it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
And I can't find the light. I've only worked here for like 5 years and I can't find the switches.
I could be working now. I could be doing something. So it's good to take some time away, but I can't get away for too long, quite honestly.
Yeah, I think when it feels like the journey is complete, you know.
It's like Darby, Montana, population 600. Man, we got to come up with a plan.
I guess this is gonna be my new life.
Really good question. By the way, you are such a good interviewer. All of your questions are solid questions.
That's exactly it. Yes! I feel like we've all had this experience.
Yeah. Other than that, it's all good. We're just going to keep trying to make it.
You know, that was a really hard moment to overcome, is just singing in front of a group of people at all.
It's hard because it's like, you're like, oh, if I just leave 5 minutes earlier, but I'll still find a way to be late.
If you marry somebody that doesn't like spiders, you become the person that has to take care of the spiders. It's just,
Exactly.
you know what you signed up for.
I don't have one because I don't think I have any more need to be glued to my phone, but I'm already like seeing myself, like they'll be on Instagram or there'll be other places.
It's definitely, I think, when you're full-time doing the same thing over and over again, yeah, you need almost like a buffer period.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts Media, based here in Seattle, Washington. And thank you so much for joining me on this Monday, the 27th of March, 2023. It's been a long time since I've done an afternoon weekday live stream, so I'm glad that you can join me right now. And I would like to thank Ashlyn Malia for joining me last Monday. It was great catching up with Ashlyn. Her EP just dropped last Tuesday, so you can check that online and all the usual places. And I think we talked about, I hadn't chatted with Ashlyn in about 2 years, so it's really great to catch up with her. And she's doing a lot of music, which is really great to see. And so definitely check her out. And if this is your first time joining me on my YouTube channel, I think you do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell. Maybe give the video a thumbs up if you want to put a nice positive comment. That any kind of interaction basically helps. If you're on the Twitch side of things, thank you so much for joining me over there. And if you can follow me there, I will follow you back. And this is one of the few live streams that I decided to also put over to my Eclectic Arts Media Facebook page. So if you're joining me through Facebook, welcome. I kind of got away from doing that just for personal reasons, and every now and then I decided to kind of put some of these over to 3 platforms, not just 2. And if you're wanting to know anything that I have coming up, everything still gets posted first on Instagram, and I'm Eclectic Arts Media, one word, over there. So please feel free to add me there. Pretty much daily I post things in my stories and my feed and all the usual kind of things. But yeah, it's great to be here, have a start of a new week. It's partly sunny here in Seattle, which is kind of a nice surprise for a week, and got some decent news for myself personally this morning, which was also good. So I'm feeling good about things. But as I've mentioned before on many live streams, especially actually as they're happening, that I love having guests come back, and that's completely the truth. I always like seeing what they're up to, if they have something new to promote, and other times it's just catching up because it's been a while and things have definitely changed for everybody, including myself. So that's no different with this particular guest. So let's get to things. My guest today first joined me on the Alice virtual tour back in 2020. Wow. She was also a guest on 3 different Fun Table sessions. Her most recent appearance with me was in December of 2021. So it's been almost a year and a half, kind of coming up on that. It is my great pleasure to welcome back to the Eclectic Arts Virtual Studio, Miss Leah Ingram. Hey, how you doing?
Hello, applause.
How you doing, Leah?
Good. How are you today, Mark?
I'm doing great. So thank you so much for taking the time to come back.
Of course.
Yeah, it's great to and I don't know if this person's watching this or if they're watching it down the line, but I have to thank one of my subscribers on YouTube to kind of reconnecting us again because of her comments on your last interview that we did back in December of 2021.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so awesome though. I mean, all it takes is that like one little thing for you to just be like, oh yeah, what's that person up to?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like there's so many guests that I always love talking to, and you've definitely been one of them. Proof's in the pudding because you've been back so many different times.
We have great conversations, that's for sure.
We do. And I think I've messaged you every now and then too, where I don't know what it is, but sometimes I kind of find myself at night when I'll be looking through YouTube or whatever, and there's certain videos I always go back to hear, and yours is always some of them. So it's that's the truth, and that's what got me connected with you in the first place.
Yeah, that's true. It was just like a by chance YouTube drive by.
Yeah, exactly. Because I distinctly remember, this is for people out there that don't know how Leah and I were connected, that one night at my old place where I used to live, I was going through YouTube looking at Phantom of the Opera covers. And then I stumbled upon her cover, and I'm like, oh my gosh, who is this? And I started looking through her channel. And then I tried to figure out a way to get in touch with her, which I did through another social media platform. And then she actually did a written interview, which is on my blog. I actually reposted that about a week ago for people to check out. And that's when I got to learn more about her and her previous work and band and everything else. And then, of course, COVID happened and the shutdown. And then I got this amazing opportunity to do these the virtual tour with Alice. So I'm like, hey, do you want to come on? And I remember things had just started to open up back there because you went back to work.
Yeah.
And so it's hard trying to find the schedules. Like, when do you have time that meets their thing?
And I think I also didn't really know at the time because it was like so random. I think it was like less than a week's notice or 2 days. It was 2 days. And then all of a sudden it was like, hey, guess what? Salons are opening again. So be there.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, I hope we can find a way to bring you on, because at that time, I thought I was only doing the first leg of their tour. I honestly didn't think I was coming back for the rest of their, whatever they had up their sleeve. Then I found out, in hindsight, that they wanted me for the entire tour. But yeah, we got connected then, and then doing the fun table sessions because everything was shut down. There was no way to connect with people. So a way to do like a virtual happy hour. And for anybody that's watching this, those are all on my YouTube channel. So you can go back after this. And if you want to watch all this stuff and get an overdose of Leah, it's there. Then we connected again in December in 2021, did a one-on-one like this to kind of see what's going on. I had just moved here to where I'm at, which is like 15 minutes away from my old place. And things were just starting to open up, but then they started to kind of clamp down around here because Omicron was showing its ugly head. And then here we are now in end of March 2023, and so much has happened for both of us.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to dig into it. And Yvette, thank you for joining us. You're the lovely subscriber that got this going. So thank you for.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being interested in general in what I do enough that like it prompted us to do this today.
Yeah. So Yvette, if you see anything else on my channel that you want to leave a comment on, maybe I can see if I can make things happen. But I always love talking to Leah, so I don't make small of that aspect. But the fact that you put a comment made me think, oh, what is she up to now? Because I know she has some things. So let's actually start with the current stuff, which is your podcast with your friends.
Yes.
So let's kind of go back. Where did this idea come from? Are these friends from high school? Or how did you come to be with these your partners here?
So my friend Ross and I have been I think when I moved to Columbus, he was one of the first people that I met. And so he and I have been friends in creative endeavors for probably the better part of 7 years. Brittany is somebody that I actually been friends with online, but we had never met in real life. And they happened to be very, very good friends. And so what prompted it is Ross was actually going through a breakup at the time. I want to say it was the fall. And he was just really going through it. And I could tell that he was really going through it. And so I remember asking, do you want me to come over so that I can help cheer you up, basically? He was just in this mental space where I could just tell needed life talks, a good conversation to be okay, what you're feeling is valid. And, those vulnerable conversations really tend to be some of the hardest ones, but they also are the most rewarding. And so we had this really awesome talk. It helped him feel a lot better. And then within a week, he had a very similar experience and conversation with his friend Brittany, who's now my friend Brittany. And it kind of popped into his brain where he was like, we need to do this for more people. We need more people to be involved in these types of conversations and make it more of a normal thing, because it really can be so life-changing. And so honestly, Same was born. We are, well, we're putting out episodes every Tuesday. We are currently on episode 4, so 5 comes out tomorrow. And we just basically touch on topics that are like life things. So we talked about, like each of us had an individual episode where we talk a little bit about ourselves and our backgrounds and those types of things. We have episodes about childhood. We have childhood up to like high school as like separate episodes, breakups and toxic relationships and all different kinds of things. So we cover a lot of the subjects that like are kind of harder hitting. But again, in like the grand scheme of things, it's really nice because at the end of it, it's almost like you just take this deep breath and you're like, wow, like I'm not the only person, you know, that struggles with this stuff or that has thought these things. So that's kind of just like the origin story of Honestly Sane.
Okay, well, that's fascinating to me. And before we continue, I want to say hi to Ove over in Norway, who's joining us again. Hi, Ove. And it's interesting how things happen organically like that when your friend is going through a rough time in a bad mental place, and then here you are trying to be a supportive soul to him, and things just kind of finally it's so strange that you bring this up because now I think about it, it's no different than, well, it's a little different than how Eclectic Arts even started, because I didn't have an idea. It was just something that organically happened with an exchange between a singer and myself.
Oh, okay.
Through email. Way back in 2010 into 2011. So I didn't have some grand plan, like I'm going to sit here and I'm going to grab a camera and start figuring out how to photograph bands and interview people and write reviews. And, oh, what about art stuff? There was none of that kind of thing. It just like, you know, I think other people might want to read this. And it sounds similar to what you're just saying, that I think other people could use this support system and will connect with what all three of you are talking about in your podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very similar then. In that case, I feel like, and I also think that some of the best things in life happen that way. When you're least expecting them, they creep up on you and you realize like, wow, this is important. And this is something that means something, you know, to me and to them. And it just happened to kind of unfold the way that it did naturally. And yeah, it's been really great.
That's awesome. I love, I totally agree with what you said. When things are not, you didn't sit there and overthink something and come up with this whole freaking plan. It was, again, very organic, and it just felt like something that needs to happen. And the fact that I'm still doing live streams, I mean, I was this close to not doing this with the Alice tour.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of funny, like, well, no, I'm so glad that they wanted to reach out to me and thought enough of me. And again, that's because they had met me in person in 2017. I've gone through this story a million times, but it's just kind of like, I'm one of those people that I always look back and kind of connect the dots, like what started where, how did I end up here? And I'm always so grateful for it because, again, I can't think of any time artistically, from my music duo to doing model photography, that where I never sat down and said, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened. And then once it did, though, then I worked hard and I massaged the crap out of it and, you know, everything else. But the initial idea, nah. So if anyone always asks me about how do you start these things,
you're like, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, I can only kind of tell you what I did once I got going. That's about it. So how do you, I know, thinking back to the first interview we did on the Alice tour, you're like, you like to talk. I remember you said something about that to me, and then that thing was so short. Yeah, because I think we only had like 23 minutes or whatever. So is this like really your cup of tea, doing a podcast where you can sit there and just kind of unleash?
I definitely feel like it is. I have had to sort of train myself to be willing to be like, hey, like listen to other people while they're talking. I get the urge as somebody that is like neurodivergent to be like, hey, I want to interrupt exactly what you're talking about right now so I can give you an example of how I relate to that. So I do have to work on that. It's a work in progress, of course, and that's part of podcasting and interviewing in general, which I'm sure happens with you guys a lot as well. And, you know, where you're just like, I just really want to like tell you the thing that is in my brain. So I've always been like a very talkative person, and I think that it gives me, for sure, a platform to do that. but also it gives me a platform to listen, which is just as important. um, because I'm definitely a talker, but I think especially in these vulnerable conversations, it's just as important to be listening. So yeah, I'm happy to have a place for it.
That's great. And yeah, I obviously have personal experience from doing, hundreds of interviews at this point. And some of them have gotten very, very, very serious about some of the topics that have come up. And I'm live every time, so I don't have like, I don't necessarily know what's coming, but I have to figure out how to maneuver through that. And especially during the Alice virtual tour, there are so many times because, and you know this, that guests were supposed to come on anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes early before we went live on the Alice tour. So I'm already talking to the guests ahead of time. And boy, some of the guests are having a real struggle during that time, including myself. So it's like, hey, we're kind of commiserating. And it's like, oh, I'm getting the countdown in my ear, but Mark, we're going to go live at blah, blah, blah. And then I have to figure out, so where do we go with this? Do we just continue this? Or do I try to start off here and then go there? And again, sometimes even just during the interview, a guest had something else on their mind that they need to get off their chest. And then you make a decision. Do I kind of steer them back or do I just follow that path? And it just kind of depends.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, it depends, of course, on like what they're struggling with, how open they are about sharing that thing, which is why a lot of what we talk about, we tend to keep like other people that were involved pretty anonymous. So you might hear us say like, oh, I had a breakup that was like this, or I was in a relationship that was like that. But we do try to keep it like discreet because, we want to make sure that while we're being vulnerable, we're also being mindful of the people that might not want their information put all over, plastered all over everywhere. So it is hard to kind of open up and have those conversations. And it's hard sometimes, even when you feel like you do want to talk about it, you're like, how do I even begin this conversation?
I know all about this because there's been 2 times when I've been interviewed live, and one of them, they wanted to talk about mental health concerns because I have been open about my own and those struggles. And it was really something really important that I wanted to share, but it's also really not in my DNA to share that kind of information. I wasn't brought up that way.
Yeah.
And so it was really interesting trying to be the person being interviewed to be the guest in a vulnerable spot and trying to put out that information. I'm really glad that I did it, but I also can understand that from like being at that time being the guest, how that could be completely a train wreck if your interviewer sucks and if they're not empathetic and if they're not listening to you, and it could just make you feel so bad that you would never do it again.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, okay, I put myself out there and it didn't really go how I was hoping it would go, and so now I'm never ever going to do that again.
Yeah. No, that's how it was for me. I'm kind of like, well, I to me, it's really being extremely vulnerable, but to the person listening and person watching, are they taking it that way? And luckily they were. But,
good.
I can understand, with you guys doing, especially having a team of 3 and depending on when you're recording your podcast, and this is true of anything, and you've been in bands before too, that, sometimes people have bad days and sometimes it's everybody in the band's having a bad day. So then should we do this today? Should we postpone it for another day and record a different day? What do we do? Or it's just like, it's so raw, let's do it and see what happens.
Yeah. And that's part of it is, so, I mean, we put out episodes every week, but typically we just, so Brittany has kids and her schedule's a little bit more demanding for that reason. And, we just shove as many episodes into a day of recording as we possibly can. But there are definitely days like where things come up or, something's going on, and it's easier to just be like, hey, like if we need to do a different day, that works out. And sometimes it's almost better to be, depending on the subject, it might be better to be a little bit like feeling a little bit more vulnerable. But, that comes with the respect of like your co-hosts and the people that are involved to be like, hey, like, is this something that you feel comfortable doing today? Or would you rather, wait until you feel a little bit more, comfortable in the subject or whatever it might be?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. it's kind of a fine line to walk. If someone's kind of like not feeling it today, so it's like, is it okay that I don't talk as much as you two? You take the lead, and I'm gonna kind of interject when I can.
Yeah.
So when you guys are recording, and it makes sense that you're trying to like put as many as you can in a session, like do 3 of them or whatever.
Yeah.
And then pull from that area. Are you guys doing much editing to your podcast? Like, are you finding sections that you need to cut out before they go live?
Typically, no. So Brittany and I are very lucky. This is our first podcast. Ross has done this quite a few times. He has a good a handful of podcasts that he not only has been a guest on and part of, but he also hosts a couple. So as of right now, he has an interview podcast called What You Don't Hate. I do that a lot in the show. I always go. He has a show called What You Don't Hear, where he interviews people, and then he has more of an improv, like comedy type game show sort of podcast, and it's called Whose Life Is It Anyway? And so he has a couple different projects that he's already doing the editing for. And so Brittany and I are so lucky that we get to just walk in and like have these conversations. And then Ross gets to kind of be the person that's like, all right, I'm going to stick them together and like make them into a real thing. And so he's a lot of the time the one going in and editing stuff. But from what I can tell so far, there's not really been anything that he or like us as a whole have thought, hey, you know what, we probably shouldn't include this. Just because, like I said, we're pretty good when it comes to discretion stuff. The only thing is, like, I think there will be a couple upcoming things where, like, whether it's for our privacy or the privacy of somebody involved in a story or whatever it might be, something might get bleeped out. Just if like later we were like, oh, hey, maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud, because then people will kind of be able to connect the dots of like maybe who I was involved in that time, like, the group I was with, or, whatever it might have been. So, but as far as I know, like, we've had pretty good in-person and in-time discretion. So we haven't really had to do a whole lot of that.
Okay. No, that's great. I'm thinking, since I've been in the virtual world doing these interviews for going on 3 years now, that when I went back last year to do some in-person ones and I had to edit those things, I forgot what a pain in the ass it is to edit those, because you have to sit there and actually watch the entire thing all over again and make notes of like, oh, I need to splice that thing out. Oh, there's something in the background there, I better move that. And these things were short. They're like maybe 10 minutes total. So I'm like, I can't imagine if I was sitting with an artist for like an hour in person and then I got to go back and edit all of that, or at least listen through it even.
You're like, I already had this conversation once.
Yeah, and it's so weird how doing these things live, for the most part, unless there's something like with a copyright infringement, I just leave it up there. So what goes out is what stays out, basically.
Yeah.
But then, before the pandemic, it was completely the other way around. I take these things, it would take me hours to go through something.
Well, and I feel like it's also like comes down to like you said, if there's like stuff in the background, like we're not super careful about like if we have like a Sprite sitting on the table or like that kind of thing. Like sometimes I wonder if that's gonna like come back to bite us later. But I'm like, hey, if Sprite knows about my podcast, then like I don't even care. Like I will tell people to get Sprite. I don't care, whatever. But yeah. As far as that goes, like I've been pretty lucky about not having to be involved in that part. Not that I would mind though. I feel like sometimes editing can like really create a whole different like mood to something. You know what I mean? So when Nick and I we did a couple of episodes of I don't even want to call it a show because there were only 2. We released a couple of videos on a YouTube channel called Why the Fuck Not? Can I swear on here? I swear on here.
Yep.
And so when we did that, I thought like half the fun was like editing it to make it be like, no, like this is how I envision it in my brain. But with something like a podcast, it's almost more about just like the continuity of everything, like rolling together very smoothly, making sure that, like you said, there's nothing where you're like, oh no, like I don't want like that thing in the background, or like you can see the light, or something like that. But Ross also has done a very good job of like having the space set up very well, and he, like I said, he's the one that's like has done this about 1 million times, so it's a little bit easier for us to just kind of show up and be like, all right, tell me what to do, where to sit, and then all I have to do is sit down, talk about my feelings, and then I get to move on with my day. So
Yeah, well, no, you're right. It's great having somebody that has a background, and then it sounds like Ross knows what he's doing. It's not his first rodeo.
No.
And I'm thinking to one of the in-persons I did with a band from the Middle East, that we kept having people come into the back green room, oh, so sorry, we didn't know you were recording back here. So I'm like, that's fine, I can just edit it out later. I mean, that must have happened like 5 times.
And then you're like, okay, I have to edit all of this out, and you have to like, there was something. Oh, okay. So one thing I will say, the studio where we record the episodes, there is a train, a very loud train that will drive by, and you'll be able to hear it in the background. And so the last episode we recorded, actually, at one point we were like, this is actually so distracting. And I don't know what it was about that one, because again, it's happened probably at least once every session that we've done. But like what Ross did was he literally like got like in the camera, and he was like, I'm just gonna, so that like later when he was editing, he could be like, oh, I'll see myself doing this weird thing, and I will know to like take this part out. It's almost like the clap, at the beginning of the thing to like sync up the sound or whatever. Yep. You look for that clap. So he could look for his weird arm waving movement that he did to be like, oh, okay, like this is the part. So I mean, obviously you'd be able to just be like, oh, here's the part where people walked in. But yeah, it's definitely probably more daunting than I even realized, because I don't have the job of that. It's not my I mean, it could be my responsibility, but he does not make it my responsibility.
I think almost anyone out there that's ever done a podcast or any kind of video interview or anything like that, even an audio interview, I literally, when I had my old audio digital recorder stuff, if there's something that I wanted out, or there's something that artists need to take a break for 10 seconds, I was like, Mark, edit. That's what I would say into it, so I would just know. Oh,
yeah. You're like, okay, like this is clearly like what I meant. Like it's almost a signal to yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes.
Totally. And that same band from the Middle East, when I said, people are walking in, I said, yeah, it's not a problem, I can edit this out. And I was like, edit, Mark, edit. And I was putting my hand in front of the camera like this, just to make sure that I reminded myself, oh yeah, don't leave this in.
Not that it would be the end of the world or anything, because it just makes it more realistic or something. I don't know, but it can be distracting for sure.
I use the chunk of those as outtakes at the end of the interview. I put them at the back of it, so once we're done with it, so you can see like maybe
bloopers, like super reel.
Yep, like 30 seconds, and sometimes people enjoy that more than the interview.
You know what? I will say there's a couple, like even just movies that have just the blooper reels are so memorable. Like Liar Liar. Have you ever seen the blooper reel for Liar?
Yeah.
Like the part where he just like crushes up this piece of paper and he goes, "Hey, goose." It lives rent free in my brain, and probably will for the rest of my life. So, but yeah, bloopers can really be fun. There was along with those videos that Nick and I used to do, there was a video we tried to make. The one that was like my favorite out of the two that we did. The one that was my favorite was we carved pumpkins while we played a drinking game. And it was really fun. We had a good time, but I remember thinking it could be better. So the next time we were like, all right, let's try to do something similar, but like maybe try to like up it a little bit, like, up the stakes. So we were like, all right, we're going to play a drinking game. We're going to have other like mini games that we're doing. We're going to decorate gingerbread houses. It was like we made way too many, like it was like we made it way too complicated. And then on top of it, like the first time we had a designated drink, like we made margaritas. That was like the thing that we bought. Going into this, we were just like, we just like have a bunch of stuff left over because it was just, you know, Thanksgiving or whatever. And we had a bunch of just like kind of a hodgepodge of things. And so I was like, all right, it needs to go harder, faster, be better in every way, you know. And so I drank way too much, way too quickly. Mixed things. I like had, I don't even remember. I was like, oh, I want to have like a holiday drink, right? So I made like a White Russian-esque thing. Ran out of whatever we needed for that. Switched to something probably with tequila, and then was drinking wine. It was just bad. And so I was like, there's a clip, and it's still on my phone, where like I'm sitting, and one of like the like challenges that we gave ourselves was like almost like a truth or dare type thing, but like Christmas themed. And we had to like pull something out of a hat as like a challenge or like a dare. And we have, I think I've shown you in the past, Nick's collection of Star Wars. You know, he collects a lot of things, and he has the helmets. So there's like this clip on my phone where it's like me slouched over, like sitting on the couch with like a stormtrooper helmet on. And I'm just like not doing well. And he comes over and he's like, are you going to make it? Like, can you know, keep going, blah, blah, blah. And I just was like, and I stood up and I walked away, and I'm pretty sure I had to go throw up. And he just goes, and he stands up, and he goes and he turns off every single camera. So like you watched him just go, and then he gets up and he just like turns it off. And I was like, I want to make a blooper reel because we never finished the video. We only got like maybe halfway through the movie. Because that was the drinking game, was like, oh, like whatever. We were watching, I think, A Christmas Story. And it was like, oh, whenever somebody says you're going to shoot your eye out, you have to finish your drink. Like those types of things where like I'm a lightweight. And I was like, this is not panning out well for me. And we made it like maybe halfway through the movie. And I was like, well, we can't make this a full thing. But I would love to use like the pieces and parts because there are really funny like little like segments of it. But yeah, it's like the editing portion of that. If I could just be like, all right, let me make like a blooper reel, even though we only have 2 videos that exist on the internet, I would love to have like a blooper reel of the one that like just never made it. So
yeah, no, that already, I mean, just the images you described sound like something I'd like to see.
It's interesting because I was like, when we were carving the pumpkins, all we were doing was we were playing a drinking game, watching Hocus Pocus, and carving pumpkins. And I like the whole time I was just like, this is too hard. Why are we doing this? And then the second time, I think it was Nick, he was like, no, like it has to be more, it has to be crazier. Like we have to do better this time. We have to like, you know, up our game. And I was like, yeah, we have to up our game. And then we upped the game, and I was not prepared, I think. So
then you're out of the game.
I was down and out. That's for sure. Yep.
I wonder if that's a ridiculous guy thing to try to do more. Because the reason I bring that up is that the fourth fun table session I ever did was with 2 other guys. And I think it came up during that one. I said, Mark, in the future, you should try doing one where you're all drunk. And I think it came from a bunch of guys talking. There wasn't any female presence in that fun table. We never did do it to that point because I'm like, this is going to be a mess. I did have a couple of guests that had too much. But that's a whole other story. But I'm thinking about. I just had a live stream like 2 weeks ago with 3 female filmmakers, and they're talking about the female approach to films is very different than the male approach. And that's what made me think of that idea of like, I wonder if that's just a stupid guy thing about you need to drink more, you need to do more.
It's definitely, I think, just the human condition. I call it my too much gene. I think it was Jenna Marbles that first said that. She's like, I have the too much gene, and so I will continue. Like once I'm ready, like if I have too much extra time, I will start putting on glitter. I'll start just doing stuff that doesn't need to be done to a point where I'm like, I look like I'm going to a ball and I'm going to Kroger. So it hits me, I think, in different ways. But I think we all have a little bit of that at least that sneaks into our endeavors.
Okay. I'll go with that then. When I was thinking, you mentioned like when Ross is doing the editing. So it sounds like he's also filming while you guys are doing the audio part, so that you can put that together if you want to.
Yeah, so we do have the videos available. They're on his YouTube channel, which is just, I think, Ross Tyson. And I know he has, yeah, I want to say it's just like on his personal YouTube channel. But he like went through all this stuff of like setting up a background, and like he and her friend Josh, bless their hearts, the background is like these like hanging flowers. It's almost like this wall of just like beautiful hanging flowers, and it just falls down like all the time. Like it just like will not stay up because they used just like duct tape. And more recently he like switched to, I think, command hooks, which like works 10 times better. But with that being said, he was like, no, I want to have like a visual to go along with this, like if you guys are okay with that. Which, you know, of course we're like, you just tell us what you want to do, and like we're pretty open since this is like our first time doing this. And so he does do video. It's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, and I think it's on Apple Music. I don't believe it's on Amazon.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's he does do the video recordings, and we actually will post those on our Instagram and stuff as well.
Okay.
So that we can kind of have a more visual representation, because some people like need that. So Nick, for example, my husband Nick is literally like so like not anti-podcast, but he's like, I can't listen to a conversation I don't get to be part of, and he just will like lose, you know, his focus on it. So he enjoys being able to watch the episodes because it allows him like the visual aspect of like, I feel like I'm just sitting here and I get to watch this conversation happen. It makes me feel like I get to be more of a part of it. So yeah, I always like that like side of stuff. But then also there are days where we're like, oh, like we have to like get ready, bring multiple costumes, wow, multiple outfits and that kind of stuff, where I'm like, oh, I have to be there at like 9 a.m. Cool. Like, and I can't just like, because in real life, like without makeup, my eyebrows go to like here. So I'm like, I can't just show up like in my jammies and be like, only my voice matters. It's definitely more like, oh, okay, like I have to make it look like I'm at least trying a little bit. So
yeah,
but
I actually had the opposite thing brought up to me, and it's a very valid point, because people are saying, Mark, I want to listen to you on the road, like in my car.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to pull up YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, I said, I'm fully aware that I need to kind of get on that, because I'm really behind the ball, because the audio podcast side of things is what really took off, you know, maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, and it is nice because I am like, I love like true crime podcasts and things like that. And some of the time, like if you have a long car ride or a commute or something like that, it can be really nice to just, like put something on and like listen to people talk and that kind of thing. So it's nice to kind of be able to do both. I think you should totally like, it's probably easier than you think it is.
Yeah, and I've had a couple friends who are tech oriented that offered to do it for me more than once, and I just haven't taken them up on it. I don't know what it is about me.
Well, and that's okay, but also here I am being like, it's probably not that hard, Mark. I think you can do it, and I'm the one that just shows up and doesn't actually have to do anything. So,
I'll find out, because again, as soon as people started mentioning that to me when I started doing the live stream, I was like, oh yeah, you know, that makes sense to me. And then I actually saw it at my former Muggle job. When I first started there, people, when they found out about this stuff, they're like, oh, Mark, what's your YouTube channel? I'll subscribe to it, so I want to check out what you're doing. And so every now and then I would actually be walking by, because they would only keep one earbud in.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'd be walking by and they're like, Mark, I didn't know you thought that, or something like this, kind of fucking with me, basically. And I'm like, which one are you watching, or what are you listening to? And so you're talking to so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, I remember that one. And I could tell them. what was going on. But then sometimes they would pull up an old one from 2020 when I'm like, I don't remember what I said during that.
I mean, it feels so long ago. I feel like the only way that I can distinguish our interviews apart, like of like time and space, is whatever hair I happened to have or like wig I was wearing. Because like in the intro, I was like, wow, I look so different in every single one of these.
Yeah, no,
So
it's
having that visual can be helpful for sure. But
it was fun for me to sit there and pull those out. I'm like, oh yeah, there's this one and there's this one, because I only had certain ones in my head. I actually forgot about a couple of them. I had to find some. What did she look like then, or was she trying to be kind of dark and mysterious? So you couldn't see her as clearly as you can now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, and now that I've done this a couple times, I'm like, all right, I need to be somewhere where like I don't have to hold my phone, because like have it on my little stand right here. So I have my hands free. And then of course, like, hey, make sure the lighting's like at least like mostly decent. Because I'm like procrastinator, and I will be like, no, I'll just get it set up like right before, and then I'm like rushing around to like, before we like get into the lobby or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no, like I can't see myself. But
well, I know you have lots of fur babies running around too, and the first interview we did, I remember I don't think you were late. You were late in terms of that little chunk before we went live with Alice. You were trying to grab one of your dogs or something was going on, I remember. And you weren't late, but you were.
It was, I want to say, like, if I let them outside, one of them now has to be like on a leash, because he will just like run. He will just run and be like, I don't care what you say, I want to play, and he'll just ignore me. And I can yell for him. He'll make eye contact and like acknowledge that I'm talking to him, and then he'll just be like, all right, I'm gonna go back to what I was doing. So now it's become a thing where like when I'm doing stuff like this, I'm like, I'm in a room by myself and they're out there, and I think actually I don't know if Nick's in the house at the moment or if he's out in the studio, but like he will be the one that's like, all right, I will take care of letting them out and like doing the thing so that then I don't have to worry about it. And I'm pretty sure right before we started, you might have heard me, but my one cat was like accidentally closed and I had to let him out. I don't think there's anybody else in here. I have one of those window hammock things for my cats. Sometimes they'll just like sit in here and I have no idea that they're even in the room. And then all of a sudden they'll pop out and I'm just like, oh my God. But
yeah, but this has been definitely a work in progress for me doing all of these live streams too, because that's why I keep there's been times when I look back at those very first ones in 2020 and I'm like, maybe I should put those to private.
No, it just shows your progress, because it's like you can look at those now and maybe you'll be like, oh, like I wasn't at the same level as I am now, but I think it also can show people like, hey, this is where we started. We started from the bottom, now we're here.
Yeah, that's what I keep telling myself. It's like, hey, someone else can see that you don't just start up here, you start down here and you work your way.
100%.
Yeah, and that's true of anything. I see Yvette saying that she loves true crime podcasts as well, so she's got something in common with you.
Yvette, tell me your favorite one. I like My Favorite Murder, Astonishing Legends, and Morbid is a good one too. So if you have a favorite, let us know. I can't see comments personally.
Yeah. So Yvette, if you do, just put it in the chat, and I'll let Leah know, or I'll stick it on the screen here. And I forgot to mention to people that if you're new and you want to put something in the chat, you can just join the YouTube channel or on Twitch. And that my guests, as Leah just said, don't see.
So you could be insulting me. I'll have no idea.
Exactly. Yeah,
Let's start the shit talk. Let's have a roast just in the comments. I won't have any idea. It'll be really fun for all involved. Because I'll just be blissfully ignorant to everything that's going on.
And Leo will just look at my facial expression, and I'm going like
what did they call her?
Yeah, I started doing that maybe 6 to 8 months ago, where I found that there was a setting where I could change it around, and it actually works out well for two things. One, if there's a troll, of course, I don't want my guests seeing that stuff, because that did happen before. And then two, the guest is more focused on the interview instead of like doing this all the time and trying to
trying to make it so that they're, because I have ADHD, sure, so I'm like, I will be talking about something and then I'll be like, oh, what is that? What did you just say? Okay.
Yeah, and if it's something where it's a little bit more, lengthy, then it's fine. But typically, if I have like 30 minutes, I'm like, I want them here. I don't want them.
Yeah, and that's so different too. I mean, yeah, it depends on like what the mood is of everything.
That's what she said.
Okay, true crime recaps. Okay.
And I see Martin says off on YouTube, you are awesome. So.
Oh.
There you go.
I'm like, you, Mark? I'm like.
Yeah, I'll put it up there. There we go. Yay.
Oh, Martin. I thought you said Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Martin.
Well, you are awesome from me as well.
Thank you both. Appreciate that.
There we go. Well, that's great that you have a podcast that I think people are going to relate to with the subject matter. And it's also, like you said, it's something that can be cathartic for all three of you as well. To be able to talk about these things. I know and I haven't really talked about this live too much, but back in October, I had a really horrible incident that happened to me personally. And being able to talk about it to people at my day job and that kind of thing, even though it was kind of hard, it really was therapeutic for me to kind of just get it out.
Yeah. I mean, that's what therapy is, if you think about it. It's like just telling a stranger. Yeah,
no, you're right. And they're such supportive, empathetic people where I used to work at too. So it was like that support system just started to kind of grow around me. So that way they know that instead of like, what's wrong with Mark? He doesn't seem like himself. They knew what was going on, and they would try to do other things to try to help me, get through the day, kind of thing.
And I was gonna say, sometimes it's harder when you're going through something and nobody knows what you're going through, because then it's almost like I have to pretend I'm okay, and I'm definitely not okay. Like, if I had a cat that passed away, and I had to still go to work, and people had no idea like that I was struggling with that, and so it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I just have to be okay. Whereas like my coworkers were very aware of like what was going on and like how I was feeling and stuff. And so, like if something didn't go right during the day or whatever it might have been, like I had people that were kind of in my corner to be like, it's going to be okay. So that makes all the difference in the world when you have people, even if you can just vent to them, having a listening ear, I feel like makes all the difference in the world. Like you might not be able to actually offer advice to somebody, or you might not know somebody well enough to be able to offer them advice, but even just being like, I'm here to listen and tell you that like what you're feeling is valid, and to tell you like that you're not alone in dealing with whatever you're dealing with. So
yeah, I
that's good to like have that support system, because it makes such a big difference, and it helps you get through those things quicker, which is like when you're going through something bad, the entire time you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm just like ready for this to be over.
Yeah, no, that was definitely the situation, and I was completely blindsided by that situation. But yeah, getting a chance to not have to put on that face, and because that's the worst. And I still remember when I started my day, the first day back, and nobody knew other than my boss, and somebody I normally talk to about movies and other kind of ridiculous things at work. He was like, "Hey, Mark, how's it going?" And then that clicked in my head, like, what do I say? Do I say I'm in hell right now?
It's going really bad. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, or do I just kind of put on the face and say, "Oh, it's going all right," and blah, blah, blah. And like I ended up just telling him what was going on. And then from that person forward, it was like every time. And sometimes people weren't even asking. They were coming up to me like, "Mark, you're sweating right now. Are you okay? Are you sick? Do you need to go home?" And
wow.
And that's when I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize I was. And that's when I had to kind of like, no, I'm not sick, but here's what's going on.
Well, and if there's like a visible change in someone, and we've all been that person that notices that somebody's having a bad day. And sometimes it's almost hard to be the person that is like, is there something I can offer you to comfort you or to help you in some way? Because sometimes you don't want to like cross a line with somebody that they are not comfortable confiding in you. And then if you're the person on the other side, you're like, nobody maybe like notices that I'm going through this. So then you're in your head just like, oh, okay, like I think I'm acting normal, but it's a very delicate balance for sure, especially in the workplace, because it's like you have to be able to be professional, and then you also have to be a human. So the balance is difficult.
Absolutely. And I think what helped in some ways is that people got to know, and this is true of me pretty much at any muggle job I've had, that people find out I'm a pretty good listener. So a lot of times I was the one listening and being the sounding board and whatever else. And then the table got turned for once, where they're kind of like, wait a minute, what's going on with Mark? He's not like he normally is. And it was great, though. I mean, it was, again, like you said, it helped me get through it faster. And it was great to know that there is a support system outside of just like my immediate family and friends. And quite honestly, I'm still processing it now, 4 or 5 months later. It's much better than it was, but it's just taking some time. So I'm like, and I've talked about this umpteen times in my live streams about trying to find balance in my life. And
and that's the thing is like some stuff just like doesn't go away or necessarily like get better, but it does sting less like as time goes on.
Yeah. So. And that's what's going on. So it's like, well, Mark, you've been doing so many in-person things and you haven't been doing as many live streams. And I follow you on Instagram and on Facebook, and here's the stuff I see you doing. It's like, yeah, but there's some other stuff out there too that's been going on that you're just not aware of because I just haven't posted about it. And that's true of anybody. I mean, you put out what you want to put out. So
of course. And actually, it's funny because one of the episodes, I wouldn't say funny, it's related to one of the episodes that we did on the podcast that hasn't come out yet. But we actually have a whole episode about social media. And like you said, it's very easy on like the front line to look at somebody's life and think that everything's okay. And like, really, it's not. Because we do only put out there what we want people to know. And sometimes it's like there's this stigma with being able to say, I'm going through a hard time and I'm not perfect. Sort of to be like, oh, I'm struggling, and it shows in some people's minds like a weakness. But realistically, like when we do see other people struggling outside of ourselves, of course, you just look at them as like a human being and you're like, oh, you're going through something, and people go through things because that's life. But when it's ourselves, we're like, I can't let anybody know that I'm struggling. I can't let anybody know like how hard this is for me, because then I will then I'll appear weak or that type of thing. So the filtered life that's on social media is like, people don't see that you're having actual real life stuff going on behind the scenes. They're seeing like, oh, Mark's doing all these cool things. So you don't really get to slow down necessarily just because things are happening. But it's also like, on the outside, people are looking in and they don't see you slowing down. They just, they have no idea. So it's definitely, social media is really difficult for that type of thing because mental health is, it's more talked about now, I think, than it used to be. Like people are a lot more normal, like when it comes to, I don't know, I don't want to say like outing themselves or whatever. People are a little bit more willing to talk about it now. Whereas, even like 10 years ago, if you said, well, I have anxiety, I have depression, people are like, okay, I don't need you to air your laundry or whatever. So I'm hoping that, as time goes on, we'll still kind of head in that same like direction of being able to be a little bit more real and vulnerable. But it's hard because, there's this pressure to be perfect and this pressure to like fit the mold of like, oh, this is the perfect person, online, and this is like their perfect life and they're so happy, and nobody wants to appear unhappy or incomplete or like they don't have their shit together, basically, when none of us actually know what's going on.
Yeah, no, everything you said, I totally relate to it. I think I've gotten to a point where I try to moderate how much I post on social media. I don't necessarily do a great job at it, but if anyone watches these things, actually, it's probably where they actually get to know me better, because I will talk about things when they come up just in conversation, but I rarely post about that stuff on social media platforms. So if you don't watch my live streams, anyone out there, and you only follow me through every of these posts that I do, you probably have a really distorted view of who I am. And what I do and everything else. But if you're watching these, and some people like Ove's watched a ton of these, Yvette was in the chat before another live streams as well. But it's like, well, no, Mark's talked about this. So I get a feel for this is why I like watching his stuff with the guests that he has, because of it's much more well-rounded. It's not
Yeah.
perfect.
Oh,
it's not
absolutely.
perfect. And if I'm having some shitty days, I definitely do talk about that kind of thing too.
No, and that's really good. And I think that it's good to have that vulnerability, obviously, because it's like what my whole thing is about right now. But yeah, it's good to have. It's almost you're stronger to have vulnerability, which people think is showing weakness. But I think it's almost like you're being strong by being like, hey, I am going through something right now. So no, I think it's really good. And you're right. I think that like you're very open and honest about like the chats that you have with people, and you get into subjects about like just like, you know, everyday life stuff, not just like, hey, you do awesome things, but like also you're a human being, which is important, you know. So
yeah, and with you being a podcaster and everything now, and getting a chance to talk with your co-hosts about you know, a wide variety of topics, you're finding out already that at least for me, when I have certain people on, and most of the time, I know at one point I didn't know you. I didn't know what you were going to be like when we first did the first one in 2020.
yeah.
So some people forget that it's a two-way street. I understand that the guests might be kind of nervous. Maybe they have some bad experiences with interviewers or whatever. But it's like, I don't know what you're going to be like. You might be a complete, you know, piece of work. And it might be hard for me to make you look good in the time that we have.
Oh, definitely.
And also, you know, on the flip side of that too, is that trying to humanize certain guests that I've had, because I think people have a distorted view of what they do in their industry. And it's one of the reasons why I brought them on, is because I'm like, no, they get up in the morning, they eat breakfast, they got to do their laundry, they got to do all other stuff. But you have completely objectified them because of what they do for their occupation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and they're not all drug addicts, people that had been abused as a child, all these other stuff. Granted, there are some of that is true in that industry, but there's a bunch that aren't in that, and they fully choose to be a part of it, and they can tell you, and they can articulate why they do things. And I think some of those that I did in the last year, those interviews have been some of the most refreshing, because that's exactly what happened, that I managed to find, not to toot my own horn, but I managed to humanize them, because that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted, because especially when the guests in that industry decided, Mark, I want to come back. They told their publicist that. So he's like, he was something I was not expecting, because they're so used to, hey, when did you first lose your virginity? Hey, when did you do that? And it's like, that's not, I don't want to talk about any of that stuff.
Right.
I am curious about some of the things you do in the industry, but not the stuff that got you there. It's more about what you're doing now, and then also, what are you doing outside of it? And you find some of them, their music.
Who are you as a human being outside of the things that you're showing everybody online? Because even like, if I look through my camera roll, I mean, it's mostly just like pictures of beans and then hair. But like, if you look through your camera roll, sometimes you'll have like, I don't know, I'll even just have like a picture of like food that I ate. And, like, I don't always post that stuff, obviously, but like, I will look through my camera roll sometimes and be like, oh my gosh, like I have so much like documentation of not necessarily who I am, but like things I experience. And then I look through, like, you know, if you're looking for a photo sometimes, and you'll be like, I know it's on Facebook. And so I'll go on Facebook and I'll go through my photos, and I'm like, wow, I really don't post like as much as I thought I did. And so it's sort of like who I am could be skewed almost like to this different level. And one of the things that we talked about actually in my personal episode of Honestly Same was, well, maybe it wasn't that one. There was an episode, I think, actually, where we played this game called We're Not Really Strangers, where we did sort of like questions with each other. And it was like, oh, like, what's something about me that surprised you? And I think that like I don't want to say like a reoccurring theme, but like a reoccurring thing that people have told me, like in my life, is they're like, oh, I expected you to be like intimidating in some way, because I love like the dark and spooky and that kind of stuff. And I didn't watch the new Wednesday show that just came out recently, but I know that like obviously there's Wednesday, and then like her best friend character is like this like bubbly, you know, like complete opposite of Wednesday. And Brittany made a comment, and she was like, it's interesting because you have the Wednesday on the outside, but on the inside, you're this other girl that's like this bubbly, like doesn't shut up. She didn't say that, but like, you know, that side of things too. And so it really is important to realize, like, yeah, what people are showing you is like what they want you to see or what's important for you to see, but it doesn't mean that it's not important that they're a person and like that they have, yeah, those everyday like thoughts and feelings that like are worth talking about. So like having those interviews where you get to talk with people and you get to actually go in and be like, no, like let's talk about who you are, not what you do. I think that that's, you know, probably where you're getting more of that. Like it feels more like fulfilling or rewarding in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my whole viewpoint anytime I start doing these live streams, I guess you could even say about the in-person ones as well, is that, and I've talked about this with the Alice. Alice interviewed me at one point last year. I think, yeah, it was last year. The whole band interviewed me. And I talked about how I approach my interviews. What I'm looking for every time is going to be that I want my guests comfortable. I want to create a safe space. I want to make sure that because if you're not comfortable, I don't care if you're just talking to somebody in a restaurant right now, you're not going to divulge very much if you're not comfortable with that person.
Right.
So if I want to try to get beneath the surface, they need to feel that they can trust me, that we can go there. And sometimes, if they trust me, they don't want to go there that particular day, which is okay too. I need to be smart enough to pick up on that. It's like, hey, don't keep pushing on that. Because again, I have seen interviews that they keep picking away at people. It's like, why don't you just stop and go somewhere else with it? Why do you need? This isn't hard journalism when you're talking to entertainment things. You're not doing politics. And even then, there's a certain point where I think you need to stop and just go shift gears, go somewhere else. But some people, they can't let it go. They just
or read the room. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Being able to look at like a situation and be able to just tell from somebody's like body language or whatever it might be, even like by their voice, if they're doing like a, an interview that's more like over, like a call or something like that. If somebody is showing signs of like not being comfortable with like a conversation or a topic or something like that, like, I don't know. I think at least like picking up on that a little bit to be able to redirect the conversation somewhere more productive for everybody involved is like a really good skill to have. Because like you said, like how many times have you watched something and you're like, this person's clearly not comfortable. I don't even feel comfortable watching this because of it, because whatever they're about to say, they don't want to say, or they might not mean because they don't actually want to have this conversation.
Yep. And because those the band Alice had asked me something about who are some of my influences as interviewers, and it was actually kind of a struggle to come up with distinctive people. It's like, oh, I really like this person's interview style, but in general, I was talking about some of the bad ones that I had seen. I'm like, you just feel bad for everybody. I mean, the subject, the interviewer, anyone who's watching, just like. Oh, but that's part of this journey too, because I've had to learn like what I want and how I want to go about my business and everything else. But I also feel that's a testament when people choose to come back, because if they didn't like it, there's no way in hell they'd come back. If you say, hey, would you like to come back and do an interview to promote your
No,
business?
I definitely feel like you always make it a very comfortable situation. It's never feeling like you're prying stuff out of anybody. Like you're very in tune with what other people are like putting out for you to, make into a real conversation. Like you can start with a question and it could go down a whole rabbit hole that maybe like you didn't think it would. But I mean, that's the whole thing, is like where it goes is determined by both people in the conversation. And anybody that's like, I think a good interviewer can say, okay, like I am the person maybe asking the questions, but this is the person that gets to decide where they go with it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's kind of how I look at things. It's like, I want to make sure that when I'm done, that guest, if they have a manager, a publicist, whoever is on their team, that when they ask them, hey, how did that interview go with the guy in Seattle? They say, oh, it went really good. I'd love to come back.
Yeah.
That's the best feedback to me ever. Instead of, oh, he sucked, he was terrible, he asked me terrible questions, he was unprepared, or he made me uncomfortable. That's even worse.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm like, what the hell did I do?
Right. No, I don't think anybody would ever say that, because I mean, we always have really good conversations, and I know that you have really great conversations with others that, I mean, you've made lifelong friends, you know what I mean? And you now have people that you can continue having really awesome like interviews and conversations with because you're good at what you do.
I appreciate it. Yeah. And that's how I kind of look at it, because somebody at my former job was like, Mark, you have really interesting friends. That's what she said. And I didn't think about it like that. But she was looking through my YouTube channel. She's coming to some of the live streams as they've happened. I said, yeah, you know what? I guess it's really not lost on me completely that because of this medium, I've been able to connect with people like literally around the world. And what's even better, which might happen with you at some point, where last year I had some people that I'd only done live streams with, and then they came to Seattle on tour. So I got a chance to meet them in person. So that was awesome. So,
Yeah.
hey, it was
hopefully someday, if I ever make it down that way, or over, I should say, not down, but over. No, I definitely think that that's really cool. And music is very much like that too. You know, like when it's almost in some ways the opposite. Like you'll meet somebody in real life and then you are like, oh, let's connect, on social media and staying in contact. And then you might not ever see that person again. And then there was actually a meme about it. And it was like, oh, hey, person I met on tour in 2013 for one day. Like, I see you raising your kids and doing all this stuff. And it's true though, because all it takes is one really good interaction with somebody to make that connection where you're like, no, I care about what you're doing. And I want to know that you're doing well. And it would be really cool, I think, obviously to meet you in person one day, or just in general, to have it come full circle in that way is just really special.
Yeah, it was. And I can tell you about the band is Capra. They're from Louisiana. They're kind of a mix of hardcore and metal.
Okay.
And they have a female singer, and Tyler's their guitarist. I did separate live streams with Crow, who's the singer, and then Tyler, the guitarist.
Okay.
And they came here. They'd never been to Seattle ever on tour, and they're opening for two other bands.
Okay.
And I just remember, so my contact was Tyler in terms of my phone, getting on the guest list and getting in the photo pass, all that. Yeah. And then when I got in there, I said hi to him because he knew obviously that I was coming. And I think the headliner was late or something, so everything, the whole back line got fucked up in terms of getting everything on stage. But those I was in there. Yeah, I was walking around just kind of relaxing, and then I hear my name, and it was Crow because she saw me.
Yeah.
So it's just a weird thing of yeah, we know each other and we know things about each other, but then now we're here in person, getting a chance to actually talk and have that energy exchange and everything else, and it was really cool. Now I hope that they get a chance to come back. But yeah, I think they were the first one that was from the virtual world that came into the in-person world.
Wow.
For me.
And that's it's so strange to be this is a tangible human that I know.
Yeah, I can speak to this too. There's two wonderful dancers that are here locally, the professional dancers that did they did interviews with me, they did fun tables with me. And I'm trying to remember, they weren't the part ones that you did, but they live here. So I'm like, okay, things are opening up. Those are kind of the people I'm first going to run into from the virtual world into the in-person world. Yeah. I didn't meet them till I think it was last month in person.
Wow. Okay.
And it became a thing of are we going to grab that drink sometime or what? So we had to purposely make it a priority. Let's do this. And it was great meeting them in person. And I forgot that one of them was 27 or whatever, and then she forgot that I'm 52, and all these other kind of things. But we were talking for a good 3-4 hours and just eating and drinking, all that kind of. But it was great. But I'm look how long this took, and they live 30 minutes from me.
Yeah. But you might not have ever even known that they existed if it weren't for what you were doing, and you had built this connection with them, and then it got to be brought into the real world, and you walk down the street and you pass people every day that you could have really awesome conversations or things in common with, and you just have no idea that this person that's within 30 minutes of me, we could have a lot in common and have a lot to talk about, and you never know. And to have an outlet like this where it's oh, this is how I've met and connected with people that I find interesting, or that I have good conversations with, and to be able to take that into the real world is just that's wild.
It is. And like we talked about earlier, that I kind of connecting the dots of how do I know this person? Well, I can tell you with those two folks, in 2019, before the pandemic, I was covering as many holiday themed shows in December as I could of 2019.
Okay.
And their local ballet company was putting on the Nutcracker, so I went and saw it. I actually really enjoyed it. It was much more my speed instead of the big version that's here in Seattle that the Pacific Northwest Ballet does. Okay. And so I wrote a review of it, and then when the virtual tour happened, and actually this, I thought about here's another way we connect dots. The dancer who stood out to me at the time that I wrote about she did a written interview, and you actually did a fun table with her, which was Anissa.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So Anissa danced with the same two people. So how that gets connected is that their co-artistic directors were trying to do some like a video montage, and they wanted someone to interview their company dancers. So they reached out to me and said, because I had interviewed them in person before the pandemic, and I said, Mark, how do you feel about doing some interviews for us so we can make a video? And I'm kind of like, so you want me to come in person, or what? I didn't understand what you wanted me to do. I said, oh no, we'll just set it up through Zoom, and I have some questions I'd like you to ask them and all that kind of thing. And that's how I met Carlos and Rowan, was doing that. And they're a couple. So as soon as I met them virtually, I'm like, God, I really like both these people. I need to have them come back on separately, like officially for Alice or what have you.
Yeah.
And that's where that started. But yeah, there's all these connected things. And just dawned on me that Anissa was with you. That was one of my favorite ones that we had done.
It was very fun. That was a long one.
It was. And it was only the three of us. It wasn't like 4 of us or anything like that. So
no, I think we only did 3. But...
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms of people, there's only 3 guests.
Yeah.
So because I remember actually having that one in the background sometimes when I would be doing stuff around my place, just listening to it. I'm like, is this weird that I'm entertained by my own stuff?
No, because I rewatch the podcast as it comes out. Like every week when it releases, Nick and I will actually sit down and watch them together, because a lot of the conversations get jumbled in my brain a little bit, because we do, like I say, like multiple sessions, we'll do multiple episodes. And so I'll be like, I think we've talked about this in another episode that's been out, but it's like hard to know what's coming out when. And so I have to almost refresh my memory a little bit. And then it reminds me of like, oh, we had a really good conversation about this. And so I think it's good to like revisit that stuff, because it was fun and we had a good time and we had great conversation. So like, why not? Yeah, revisit it. I'm sure people re-listen to, podcast episodes or like rewatch movies, YouTube videos and stuff like that. Like, of course we all have like a favorite movie. And if you have a good conversation, there's no reason why it shouldn't be, something that you like listen back to again.
Okay, well, I don't feel so weird then.
No, I feel like there's even like interviews and things like that. Like, yeah, there'll be like I know a lot of people really love like the Hot Ones interview where they do like the hot wings, and some of those are so funny that I'm like, I could just watch these little scenes. Like there'll be little like snippets of them that pop up, and I'm like, that's really funny, and I want to watch that again now.
Yeah, and see, that makes perfect sense, because I'm definitely a rewatcher of stuff. People know that. I just found it a little odd that I was re-listening to my own stuff, but I guess that's not too.
Well, you have the pleasure of being able to relive like good conversations that you've had. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like being able to interview people and have like really cool like conversations, and then look back at them and be like, oh yeah, like we talked about this, and like maybe it like flew under the radar like when you were first watching it or doing it, and you're just like, no, actually, like we made some really good points. And like it's not very common that people get to revisit those things in their life. So I feel like it's actually really cool that you can, to be like, oh, like I feel like I could basically just be hanging out with these people right now.
That's true. I didn't think about it that way. And there's definitely some of them that I wish would find a larger audience, because I think the conversation was usually just very entertaining. I'm thinking about some of the group ones that have happened. It's like, man, those things are just hilarious, or they're insightful at times too. And I think some people are missing out. It's partially because when they look at it, they don't really know what it is, because there's like, well, who are these 3 people?
Yeah.
And they might check out like the first few minutes of it, and like, okay, then they move to the next thing. Versus like, here's the guest, and I either know who they are, or I'm interested, or I saw the previous one, so I want to see them again. It's just kind of interesting. And Yvette put this in a little while ago. Sorry, Yvette. I was going to put it on the screen so Leah could read it.
I work in a hospital. I'm going to read it out loud. Are people watching this back going to be able to see this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then I won't read it out loud. I'm like, oh, let me read it for the people. Oh my gosh. Yvette, are you a nurse or a doctor? Always try to listen to them. You know what? I will say, and again, I don't know if like you work in a hospital as a nurse or doctor. I'm just like guessing, because I'm like, oh, medical stuff. You could be doing a million things working, in a hospital. But I think that we've all had doctors or nurses that listened to us and we were like, wow, I feel validated in like my physical health and even my mental health. And then we've all had experiences where people are like, I don't know, take a Tylenol and go home. And so I will say that like makes a world of a difference to have somebody that actually cares and listens and makes sure that like you're comfortable with like whatever is happening, because nobody that's in a hospital is like, oh, this is great, like I'm just here like having a good time. So that's like one of those situations where I feel like it's so nice to have like people like Yvette who will, you know, be willing to like be an ear for people, because like you said, like maybe they just don't. Like coming in to the cosmetology field, one of the things that they stress to you is you might be the only person that literally has physical contact with this person in a day, in a week. Like some people live alone, or you know, if they're elderly and they don't have family nearby, like, and it could literally be anything, and you're even just washing their hair or just sitting there listening to them talk about stuff, like makes such a huge difference, because they're literally just like, the interaction itself is so special, and it might not be like a big deal to you to be doing that, but it could be the biggest deal ever to them for you to just be like, oh, I'm gonna listen and like actually connect to this person. Because you could easily like go into somewhere and they're just like, all right, I'm gonna cut your hair, you're in and out, and be done with it. But I think that connecting with people on like a deeper level is part of what like helps to create like a good like client relationship. Not that you want like a regular at the hospital, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it goes to show that when some places of business say that they actually want to create a positive culture, that means everybody. Doesn't matter what your job is in that building.
You could be the janitor. I'm like, say hello when you walk past people. It might make their day.
Yeah, and I know that from my own Muggle experience that I was working around some seniors at one point, and they come to the one community center because they can interact and be social with their friends and that kind of thing. That's their big thing of the day, but also the people around, the front desk, me, whoever else is wandering through. And so like if you're a jerk in terms of an employee around there, that's not a good thing.
No.
And most of the time, yeah, they just want to say hello. They just want to kind of chit chat. And sometimes, you know, they want to talk forever. You got to, hey, I got to kind of get back to what I'm doing. But, you know, just having the right demeanor with them. And you're right, it can make their day. And sometimes they get used to it. Hey, Mark, are you going to be here on this day? Are you going to be here on this day? Oh, yeah. I'm not here Friday. But they're already looking forward to seeing you. So I'm like, wow, this was a long time ago when I first came out of college. I was a special education teacher, which some people know or don't know.
I knew that.
Oh, well, that's what I did for 7 years.
Good for you.
And I was one of the one of those teachers for whatever reason, especially towards like the last couple of years of teaching, where if there was somebody, so I had 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, so the junior high setting. If there was a student who was kind of burning bridges and they couldn't find a TA placement for this kid, and a lot of times, unfortunately, they would be in a TA situation because they were kicked out of classes. So it's kind of like, well, where can we put them? We can't have them just sitting around in the office all day, or not all day, but for a period.
Yeah.
So they would come bug me and say, hey, Mark, can you take on another TA? And I'm like, I don't need another TA. It's like, what am I going to have them do? And I was also working at that time on the 6th and 7th year of teaching with more involved students that had special needs.
Yeah.
So that can be pretty scary to some people that aren't comfortable being around it. So as soon as they walk in the room, they're like, ooh, like what's going on here? But some of the best things is that I would, if I had room, I'd grab that kid and say, hey, okay, here's so-and-so, and here's who you're going to work with, and this is what you're going to have to do. If you have questions, I'm always going to be here. You can ask me. I'd start them off easy in terms of what kid I'm going to pair them with. And I know what the kids like and in terms of what they're going to act like. And a lot of them, they might act like, say, a 3 to 5 year old because that's where cognitively they are.
Right.
But for I'm thinking this one 9th grader that came in and he was like Mr. Cool and everything. And he got really wide eyed when he came into our classroom. And he was just like, oh, I don't know about this. And I said, oh, no, come over here. I'm going to have you sit at this table. I'm going to grab. I didn't give him a chance, basically. I just said, sit here, put this kid with them. And I knew the little girl was going to be like asking like a zillion questions and wanted to like touch his hand and stuff. And you guys just watching that kid. So if he doesn't run out of here in the next 60 minutes, he's going to end up staying. He's going to end up liking it. And it turned into one of the best parts of his day, he told me, because the kids were looking forward to him. And I remember all these memories coming back into my 52-year-old brain. That little girl that I first paired him with, he had gotten himself into some trouble, was suspended for like a week or whatever, and he came back. His first day back into our program, she's like, "Where have you been?" La, 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 la. She was on him. And he was like,
she was giving him a hard time.
Yeah, and he was apologizing to her for being gone, and he won't get in trouble anymore, and all this kind of stuff. So it really worked out both ways.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you again that what you're doing and what you're around, you don't know how the other people are perceiving you, and in some cases how much they're really kind of hanging on to that interaction with you. If they're getting their hair done that day, or other people in your office or in your salon that they're talking to, or whoever. It's just like, yeah, I had a good day today because I had this really good interaction there.
Yeah. And I have that too. See, and backtracking, like I knew that you were a teacher. I didn't know that you were involved with special needs kids, which is awesome. I have 2 nephews that are on the spectrum, and I feel like people that are like able to help like connect them in the ways that I think they have issues with connecting, it makes it so special so that they can feel more just connected in general to the people around them. And that's, like I said, it's just a priceless thing. I used to nanny for a little boy that was on the spectrum that was 6 years old, I want to say. And he was like almost direct opposite of like my nephews. And he was very like he was on a very like organized, like had to have everything like very scheduled out and that type of thing. And it's just like you said, like, you know how some kids are going to react, and you don't know how other kids are going to, or you know how they're going to react to different situations and things like that. And so it was kind of cool that you played like almost like matchmaker of like, I know that if I stick this kid with this little girl, she's going to steal his heart, and you know that it's going to make him realize that like there are more important things than like looking cool and you know that type of thing. But yeah, I would say there are even like, it goes both ways, where there are times where like I will have an interaction with somebody where like I did their hair or whatever, and I'm like, I hope that was as special to them as it was to me, because like I felt like I connected, you know, with that person. Like we had a really good time. And it's sort of like what you were saying earlier about like when people come back to, you know, be guests on this, it's like when people come back and they reschedule with me, I'm like, okay, good. Like it almost validates like that, like I felt like it was a special connection, and it makes me happy to know that they felt the same way. So yeah, you never know if like the littlest thing might just change somebody's mind or change the way that they feel. And it's a really special thing to have that opportunity. And I think that if you have it and you can like just make it as easy as just like, hi, how are you today? And like actually mean it and actually like dive into conversation a little bit. Like it could change the world if everybody did that a little bit more often.
Here, I totally agree. I wish more people would do that kind of thing and just kind of take a little bit more time out of their day to not be concerned about themselves per se, and maybe ask about someone next to them.
Yeah.
And I'm a perfect example of that also, because I'm always been introverted. I'm not an extroverted person, so I would much rather stay in my lane when I'm out in public than going around and, you know, saying hi and hello and look at the sun, you know, to everybody. But I've incorporated a piece of that into my personality now as I've gotten older and as I've been doing these kind of things. And some of it, I'm just thinking, so I was covering Queensryche last week, and I haven't been to that venue since the pandemic. And I didn't even have my credential around my neck, because I understand sometimes if I'm wearing a photo pass around my neck, people, oh, you work here at the venue, so I have a question for you. I didn't even have that around my neck. I came out of the bathroom, and this dude was like, so where can I sit? And he was like right in my face, and he wasn't.
You're like, how did you know that you could ask me that?
Yeah, it's just like, I said, well, and I've been there before, so I know like this is general admission, so the seats are upstairs in the balcony, and then you have to stand down on the floor and all that. So I'm kind of going through this stuff with him. And then another guy asked me the same thing. He was showing me his ticket. Says general admission 2. So does that mean I have to be in a certain section? Is that where's 2 at? And I was telling, well, here's where all the seats are. So I'm basically doing someone's job there at the venue. But
yeah, you're like, I'm not the usher here, but I will try to assist the best that I can.
Yeah, and that's what I told him. I said, here's what I know from the past experiences I've had here. Was I do not work here, so I'm just going to be, shooting the band and that kind of thing. But they didn't seem to care about that piece. They're just kind of like, where can I be? And
they're like, you can help me, and I know it. So
yeah. This other guy came over. I was like, I know there's got to be a bar around here somewhere. Where's the bar at? And I was like, downstairs. I'm like, oh my god, I've only been here for like 5 minutes before asking me this question.
Oh my god.
But being, again, as we're talking, being the person that I am now, I will be glad to help somebody if they're just asking me a question like that. I won't be like, I don't know, and just walk beyond my way. It's like, well, no, I'll try to help you if I can. And again, you're not being a jerk. And at the same time, sometimes if I have to intervene in some situation too, because I see something that isn't right, if I have to get security because I do know who they are, and say, hey, right over there, and just get their attention. Especially if a band's playing on stage, they can't see and hear everything. They definitely can't hear everything. So it's like, just putting their eyes to something and then they can go deal with it.
Yeah.
That's a whole other ball of wax when you're, in a photo pit and you got 1,000 screaming fans behind you. And shit. And
gosh.
That's I can do my own podcast about that if I ever wanted to.
Yeah, do it.
Maybe I will, but
that'll be the one you can put it on Spotify and all that stuff, and it'll be your test run.
Yeah, that's true. I could talk about because that experience is still, even though I've been doing it since 2016, I think was the first time I shot a show. It's still really kind of nerve-wracking to me. I don't feel 100% comfortable when I'm in the photo pit. I'm much better than
I want to say that it's the anxiety of just being surrounded by that many people. There's always going to be part of you that's just like, okay, wait, this is a lot right back here. This whole thing is going on, and then you have to be focused on up here and trying to make this appear like you're I don't know, you are calm and collected because you're like, I need to make these photos look good. And so I definitely I am, even after being a musician as long as I was, I don't like going to festivals because there are just so many people. I don't like going. There's certain stuff that it gives me anxiety to be in that situation, because I don't think it ever necessarily gets better in ways of you can get used to it, but it's always going to be loud. Even if you're used to loud, it's still loud. And it's always gonna be crowded. And again, even if you're used to crowds, it's still a crowd. But no, I think that that whole thing, even just being part of a music scene in general, there could be I'm sure there are a million podcasts about it actually, but
yeah, you're right about the whole the group thing, because then it does get a little fight or flight starts sinking into you, when you've got a bunch of crazy people behind you. Gosh. And so some of the shows that I cover that are much more mellow, those are quote unquote easier for me.
Yeah.
But I'm a metalhead, so some of the crazy shows where bodies are literally coming over the barricade kind of thing. And
you got the mosh pit behind you.
Yeah, and you're trying not to get kicked in the neck, because that's happened a couple times to me, and you're trying to focus up here. So you're kind of doing this thing all the time, just making sure. And a lot of times you can tell because the security is getting ready to grab somebody, so they kind of know to move out of that way. But sometimes you don't catch it, and then someone's leg comes over and whacks you in the head and that kind of stuff, and that creates issues. But at the same time, I wouldn't trade it either, because it's just that experience of seeing some of your favorite bands and you're trying to capture them in such a difficult situation with the lighting and movement and the craziness. You know that from being
and I was gonna say, no matter what, it's a give and take. You're gonna be, I'm sure anybody would be like, oh, I would love to go to this thing and be the only person there and have a one-on-one where this band is playing directly to me, but nobody's. That's just, it doesn't make sense, and nobody's that lucky unless you have a lot of money. But no, I definitely think that there's something about being there for that experience that makes it worth it. Of course, where you're okay, I know I might get kicked in the neck. You're I know that somebody might jump over this barricade and I could break my camera literally just because somebody was being careless and breaking the rules, and security might not have been able to stop them in time. You take those risks going into those situations because you're I get to do this thing that's really cool. So I get that too.
Yeah, totally. It is very much give and take and risk reward kind of situation. And And some of the people, especially like publicists, they don't necessarily know the whole scope of what I do. So they think, oh, he's a film guy. He reviews film. So that's what I know him through. They don't know about the rest of this stuff unless I have to bring it up to them. It's like, hey, I don't have time in my schedule because I'm at this opera and this band's coming to town. I've got this live stream. Like, oh, I didn't know you did all this stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, I have my hand in a bunch of different things. And I love doing all of it. And who knows, a year from now, if I'm not adding another piece to it, because I just don't know where they're going to come from. And before I forget, Yvette says that she's in the administrative side of things at the hospital. So.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, which is also very important. Brittany, my co-host on Honestly Same, we actually just recently recorded an episode about parenthood, which she kind of took the reins on because she's the only parent out of the three of us. And she was saying how and of course you have to like stay calm during all, you're at a hospital and there's going to be a lot of like really crazy stuff going on. But she had this experience where she was like, I'm having a baby like right now. And this person was like, okay, well, let's take down your social security number, like stuff like that. That type of thing. And I'm like, if there was somebody that cared a little bit more about what she was experiencing, because she arrived like on the scene and baby was there like 10 minutes later, like didn't get the drugs, like any of that stuff. And I'm like, if somebody had looked at you and been like, you are acting this way for a reason and I need to validate this by taking it seriously, it could have changed everything, for that experience for her. And it might just be the millionth person that you've seen that day. But again, that millionth person that you're seeing, that is their one trip to the hospital, hopefully. So, well, for a while, and that's what we hope. But if it can be at least a little bit more pleasant in some way, shape, or form, that is amazing.
Yeah, no, and it goes exactly to what we were saying earlier about anyone who's involved in any particular business, whatever your role is there. If you happen to come across, even if you normally don't front face the public at all, but you're on your way to go refill your water bottle and you have to go in a public area, maybe grabbing the door or saying or smiling even at somebody, anything to make it a little bit better, that's always a plus.
Yeah. Oh, I think so too. So cheers to you, Yvette. I think that's really awesome that you take the time to care for people that you come in contact with, because that's a special thing. And I think that it's awesome. So.
Yeah, for sure. Keep that particular attitude and point of view up, because Leah and I both agree that that's we need more of it.
Gosh, yeah. I think if people had more of like the common courtesy that I feel like used to be like a regular thing in the world, it would be a much better place. I mean, even just thinking about like the way that the world has evolved over the last like, let's say 50 years or something like that. Like, it's crazy if you look back to like the like 60s even versus now, where like everybody was very polite and there was this almost just expectation that people were supposed to be kind to one another. And now it's kind of like, mind your own business and get out of my way. So I don't know. I think that we could afford to be a little bit kinder in general as time goes on. So
yeah, no, I for people that have young babies or young kids, I do kind of wonder what their future is going to be like.
Oh my gosh, I say the same thing all the time, because I think a lot about if I had a child right now and how scary it would be like to be a parent to a child right now, because there's just so much. I mean, not that there's not always stuff that's wrong with the world, or like there wasn't stuff that was wrong in the world when I was born, but it feels like now as an adult, and I'm so much more aware of all of that stuff, I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't know how I would feel if this was like the place that I was trying to like create a good human.
Yeah, no, I again, with my background, with a lot of community-based agencies I've worked for, a lot of diverse populations I've worked with, because I've worked with besides special needs, I've worked with foster care, I've worked with gang-involved youth, all these types of things, that seeing where the world's at, and if you had to figure out like 20 years from now, if you had a kid, what they're going to be dealing with.
Yeah.
No, That doesn't.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you get to be the people that fix all the stuff that we messed up.
Yep.
And if you think about, like, I don't know, there's like a generation that eventually gets to a point where, like, when they're retiring, there's like a new generation that's kind of taking over, and then, you know, there's a lot of, you know, cycles that are in place and everything like that. And there's just this ongoing thing of, like, the older generation being like, the younger generation doesn't know how to handle this, and the younger generation being like, what did you do to me that now I have to handle this? And the older generation being like, well, you don't know what we went through either. And it's just like, as you get older, you're like, wow, it's actually not as easy as I thought it would be. So, like, there just needs to be more respect just in general. Yeah, like, of like, oh, it could be better if just everybody was better.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about some of those seniors that I got to know at my former Muggle job, that sometimes they give you that look like, good fucking luck.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm almost clocking out, Mark. You know, good fucking luck to you and anyone else that's younger than me. I'm like, yeah, I know what you're talking about because I feel it. Yeah, it's crazy. And I want to kind of shift gears a little bit here because, oh gosh, we've been talking for an hour and a half.
I know.
Which has been great. But I want to see, is there anything that you're doing musically? Because that's what connected us from the get-go. Are you just not doing any music right now? Or is there something that's been percolating, or you're half written a song, or where are you with music?
There's a lot of half-written songs. There's a lot of things that I have put out. I think since we spoke last, I've only probably done one more thing, which was my husband and I put out a pop punk, just one song, under the name Kick Me, which was his like AOL Instant Messenger like screen name when he was a teenage boy. So we wanted to make this kind of nostalgic pop punk song that was sort of about when you hit this age where you're like, I'm older than, like, you know, these people that are writing these songs are about like stay young forever and party till we die, and like I'm too old for that. I don't want any part of that. But I'm also like young enough that I still feel like I have time to do a lot of things. I'm not ready necessarily to give up on like the things that I care about in my dreams. And, you know, there's just this pressure of normalcy from all of the people around you when you're involved in, like, let's say just like less conventional like paths or whatever, like where it's more like, oh, like I'm taking a creative path, like I don't have health insurance, like those types of things that like more people I think are starting to do now than they were before. But there's this disconnect between like I'm too young to like give up, but I'm too old to like look at what I'm doing and be like, yeah, let's rage and go on forever, you know what I mean? And so the song kind of encompasses this like age where I'm at, where I'm like, I turned 30 this year. I am tired. But I still have things I want to do and things that I want to accomplish, and I'm not completely ready to, like you call it, like join like the Muggle world, where I'm like, I don't necessarily feel like a Muggle, but like I'm starting to appreciate Muggle things more. So I'm like on this bridge sort of, and it feels like it's rocking from both sides. And so that's kind of like what the song is about. And I want to say that like hopefully we will put more music out under the same sort of like umbrella at some point. But it all comes down to like the time and the place and all of that stuff. So we have that like is kind of on the back burner. I have a friend that, you know, we've been writing some stuff just for fun. So it's always happening in the background. And, you know, for Ingram Audio to be taking off the way that it is, you know, my husband does like plugins, and he owns a plugin company that I help him run. We write a lot of music for that as well. So we actually, like, right before I came on here to do this, we were working on a song, because for all of his like how-to videos and things like that for YouTube, he actually is like, I need a song to work on, you know, like, and I can't just ask a band like, hey, can I use this thing that we recorded? Because it's a very vulnerable thing for people to see your work like unfinished. And so we were like, we don't care if people see this unfinished because it's something we just made up. So it may not be something that's like super like important or like close to my heart, but I am working on music and I'm getting to put things out there, which at this point is like enough for me. Doesn't mean that someday I might not be like super involved in something, but like with where I'm at right now with, you know, the podcast and with my job, it's just like the perfect, see, I did it again. One at the beginning, one at the end. It's like the perfect sort of medium ground for where I'm at the moment, because I love music so much and I don't want to get to a point, I was so close to being burnt out by it. And I don't want to get to a point again where I'm like, I can't do this. I don't want to even think about this for a while. So I'm enjoying it and I'm going to like take that as a win and keep doing what I'm doing so that way I can continue to have something that's so important to me and so like close to my heart and my soul, that's like doesn't feel like work or doesn't feel like something that's like so demanding that it's not fun anymore. So that's kind of where I'm at musically at the moment. I still really enjoy doing my covers. There are plenty of covers that I actually like have in my brain or like saved on a like Spotify playlist of like, hey, I want to do this at some point. But yeah, it's like finding the time and all of that stuff at the moment that I'm just like coasting.
Well, you know what's good about this is that it kind of sounds like what you had told me even in the written interview. You're kind of taking things in stride musically. You're not forcing yourself like, hey, people are really kind of taking notice of my stuff. I better get in there and start working, and then getting burnt out on again and not liking it, and then you're back to square one all over. It's like, well, no, I'm doing it, you know, as it feels right when I have time, and so you know, it'll happen when it happens, kind of a thing, instead of like. Yeah. No, Mark, you know, I already know my next release is this date, and I got this date, and then we're going to do a show over here, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know, everyone's got different things of what they're looking at, and also different priorities in life, too.
Of course. And that's such a big thing, too, is like, as we get older, like those priorities start to shift and change. And not that music is not like an important thing in my life anymore, because it always will be, I think, until the day I die. But it's just not like the defining thing in my life at this point. Like it used to be everything. It was all I cared about. It was all I strived to do. It kind of consumed my life in a lot of ways. And I like that I have sort of the freedom to, I don't know, take it and be like, this is my thing that I enjoy doing and that like is a big part of my life, but it's not controlling my life or dominating my life in a way where I don't have, you know, the ability to do other things.
It's very well said, because I know, I think I'm in a better space myself, but there was definitely a period of time where it was like, I felt like the roller coaster was going off the edges. I mean, I was doing so much stuff, and so I already know I'm not giving 100% to these things, which was bothering me a lot. And it's like, well, it seems simple enough on paper. Well, Mark, you're in charge of it. Just say no to these things, and then don't take on so much. But then there were certain things that came along, like, but I really want to do that, so I don't know how to say no. I guess was part of my issue. Until I was basically forced to say no by my body and other things. It's like, you know what, you're stupid. You're not listening to us. So we're going to make the decision for you. And then you won't be able to do any of these things for like 2 weeks. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm coming back to this. Be smart about this. Take it in pieces. Again, keep that balance you keep talking about, because you're way, way out of balance, you know, in terms of what you're doing. And for me, what works is that I will literally not type it on my phone. I will literally write stuff down of what I have coming up for the next, say, 2 weeks. And when I look at that list, that's when it gets very real to me of like, oh shit, this isn't even, I wasn't supposed to be doing half of this stuff. I'm already getting back into that bad habit of doing too much. Yeah. So it's like, well, then fix it, Mark. Fix it right now.
It's easy to stretch yourself so thin when there's so many things that you like want to do, and that's the thing is like, it's not like you're not enjoying the things. It's just hard to when like you're running on hardly any sleep, or you know, you've got a million things that you have to edit before it's time for you to finally like rest and like have a day to just like sit and do nothing. And so I've learned my sit and do nothing days are just as important as my productive days, because you need a day or two to just like recoup and like be able to be like, it's okay if I just want to sit on the couch and like catch up on, you know, binge watching a TV show. It's okay if I put my phone down and don't answer all of my text messages today and get back to people tomorrow. Like, it's taken me a long time in my life to get to a point where, because I'm a big people pleaser, it's gotten me to a point in the past where I did spread myself too thin because I was like, no, like maybe I could use like a little time off, but I know that I'm really going to enjoy this thing and I really don't want to let this person down by doing this thing or not doing this thing. And so I would just do it anyways. And so that's like the easiest way to be like, oh, other people have expectations of me. But as I get older, I'm like, if I have plans with somebody and I'm feeling burnt out, I can just text somebody, you know, the same way that they can text me and just say, hey, you know what? It's been a rough week and I'd love to see you and maybe we can reschedule, but like I just need a day to like do nothing. And you know, it's like I was so afraid to do that in the past, and now usually when I do that, people are like, okay, thank God, because like I was thinking the same thing. And maybe not the same with like, you know, work and creative endeavors and things like that. Like obviously, like if you have an interview planned, like it's a little bit harder to be like, actually I can't make this happen today, because you've already like promoted and that kind of thing. But yeah, to be able to physically like write down and look at the things that you're working on or like have to work on or get done, it does put like an actual number in your brain in a way of like, oh, this is a lot. So no, I think that's a really good idea. I feel like I love the action of like writing stuff down. I have quite literally in my closet, I have like a stack of journals. I love journals. I hate writing in journals because I'm afraid that I'm going to make an ugly letter and have to rip the whole page out. So I wish that I was better when it comes to like planners and stuff like that, because I think that it's such a like tangible way to actually like write things down and pay attention to like what is in your brain. And I know that a lot of therapists will have their patients and things like that write down like, hey, just like something that you felt today, or like something that like is stuck in your brain maybe in a way. And just being able to like, yeah, have that like tangible thing of like, oh, this is the thought and now it's here and now I can be done with it. Or here's all the things and now I can pick which ones are the most important, or, you know, whatever it is that you might be doing with them. I wish, yeah, I could do it on like a sticky note, but I can't. Like, I have these like beautiful journals and I'm like, I don't want to ruin them.
Yeah, you're right about like with therapists, because a lot of times they want you to write like a letter to yourself.
Yeah.
And that type of thing. And I have journals too. I haven't journaled in a long time, but I do have them. I know exactly where they are still because I've kept them even from my early days of teaching. I have those, and it's interesting every now and then, you know, every blue moon to kind of go through that and see what was going on. I'm like, wow, you know, I forgot that's where my head was at that time.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like a good thing too. I forgot something really great happened. I thought, oh, I completely forgot about that thing.
Yeah.
But hi, Tony. Good to see you. Tony's joined us since the Atlas tour, so he's been here, Leah, before, and that's how I got to know him. He's a really great concert photographer. And I'm going to put this. This is from Yvette. She put this up here.
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet. Thank you so much. I hope that you do start playing music again. Again, I am so grateful that I've made the connections that I have through music, and it will always be so important to me. And I think that like it's hard sometimes when you get away from it, but it is worth getting back into if it's something that you really do love.
Yeah, and I think, Leah, we've talked about how my mom really loves your voice, and she knows. I've had so many guests, and my mom's, well, she's older. I won't say exactly how old she is.
You're gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, I'm not that stupid. But of the guests I've had, and there's been, you know, over 300 of them just from the live streams. She remembers you because of your voice. She's listened to the songs on YouTube. So
that makes me feel so warm inside that I'm just like, Mark's mom loves my voice. Like that's all I could ask for, really.
There you go. Because I remember the first time I heard it, I think I sent a link to her, just said, hey, check this out and take a listen when you can. And yeah, I know usually particularly like what type of voice she likes and one she won't necessarily like. Even if I see a musical that comes to town, I was like, oh yeah, you probably wouldn't have liked the lead's voice because it was a little too pitchy or a little too high or whatever.
Yeah.
I know that sweet spot that she tends to like, and that's where your voice is. That's also why I like it too, because our taste is pretty similar that way.
Well, thank you so much. No, that means it means the world to me. I'm like, I feel like I'm really bad at accepting compliments about my voice and my music because it's literally something that I just have. It's just like in my body or whatever. But no, I really do. It means so much to me that people, even because now I'm like, I don't really do that much anymore. So if there are people that are like, oh, I still watch like your YouTube videos, like your band is still like in my Spotify rotation, like that, it's just like, I can't even explain like that feeling that it gives me, that like when I was a little kid, that was like all I wanted was for people to like know or care about me as a musician or my music and what I was doing. And that's just like everything that I ever wanted. And maybe that's part of it. I'm like, I did the thing. People like me. I can move on now. But I don't think I ever will, at least not completely.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I'm just like Yvette that, and I think I've told you this, that whatever capacity, I just hope the music's somewhere in there at all times.
Oh, yeah.
It won't be front and center necessarily, but as long as you don't completely abandon it, it's like, you know what?
No, exactly. No, I don't think I'm allowed. There's too many people that would be very upset with me.
Yeah.
Including my dad. You know my dad, so. Yeah.
That is true.
Yep. He will abandon me as a daughter, probably. He would be like, nope, disowned. You're not allowed to do that.
And that's when I'll get the message. Mark, can you talk to my daughter?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Mark.
Can you use your platform?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that sounds about right.
But no, that's great. That I mean, it sounds like everything's really going well. You got all these different things going on with your job, and with the podcast, and with Nick, and all the business things he's doing, and your pets, and just this hasn't changed. I'm still a big energy person when I talk to my guests, and I can usually kind of tell like where they're kind of at. And yeah. Of course, during the pandemic, everyone was just doing the best they could. At that point. Yeah, but now at least like most people, they feel like they're in a better place for whatever reason, in terms of what they're doing, and that it's always great to be able to catch up and make sure that they're there, and also that I'm there too, that I'm in a good place. And
of course, and I think that that's so good. It's not only that, like, obviously, like, you get to do this a lot and I don't get to do this a lot, like, and us doing this together and like getting to reconnect is really, really awesome too, because I think that like there have been plenty of times where like in the midst of when we were recording things, like I might not have been in like the great place that like I'm in right now, but like it's nice to be out of the pandemic and feeling a little bit more human again, and to be able to maybe talk in a more like, I don't know, not comfortable place, because I've been comfortable, but like in a happier place. I feel like this is probably like, I don't know, I'm in a good place right now.
Yeah, and it comes across.
I feel like that makes it.
Yeah, it comes across. I think anybody watching this probably feels the same way. And even if they don't know who I am or who we are, it's the first time they're coming across my channel or something. It's like, oh, who's this? And they listen to and watch the discussion. They'll kind of know. I think it just kind of comes. That's why any podcast, anything that people listen to, they like the conversation, but they also like the personalities that are there. Because obviously, if you don't like them, if they're annoying to you, then you're like,
oh, turn off. Yeah.
There's so many other choices you have out there, so it's like there's got to be something that brings people back.
Yeah. No, for sure.
But Leah, thank you again for taking so much time today to reconnect and have this great discussion. And my door is always open to you, and as long as I'm still doing this,
and vice versa. Even if you're not doing this, you can always reach out to me.
That's awesome. And who knows? Like I mentioned to you pre-show, with Alice being on tour again, and I've made my surprise visits on their tour. I have thought about trying to actually like fly somewhere at some point and just show up.
And just be like, hello, it's me.
Yeah, it's just be like, hey, so are you guys a band or what's going on? If that happens to coincide with if I'm in a city where other people are at, that's even better, because then I get a chance to meet that person as well. And maybe they can, head over to the show, and maybe not, but just just that kind of like we talked about going from the virtual world to the in-person world. At some point, maybe it'll happen, and if not, that's okay too, because I treasure these things as well. So,
of course, no, I think that would be a really cool way to come full circle.
Yeah, and then we can do a live stream in person.
Yeah,
that would be crazy.
Oh my gosh,
we're there either. Yeah, we're at your house or at some, I don't know, some bar or some park or someplace, and like, hey, and I go through my normal thing, and then people realize I'm actually on
They're like,
vacation.
what is that background?
Yeah, I was like, is that a dog that's at my pass? What's going on? Why are you doing it at this weird time, Mark? We're in a different time zone.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Because it's what time is it? I can't even see.
It's probably it's going to be 5 here, so it'll be 8 there.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's so much light in my room right now because it's afternoon.
It's still actually like the sun is just now starting to set here, so like the sky is getting dark, but it's not dark out yet. So, which is nice. I'm glad that we're like at that point.
Yeah, so am I. I'm just so like, there's a point when I was looking at myself in the screen here. I'm like, why is it so light in here? It's because I don't normally do these right now. I'm usually at nighttime trying to light myself up so I can be seen.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's plenty of light now. And yeah, Tony, you know, if I'm ever out that way, I'll let you know, either Pittsburgh, Columbus, you know, somewhere in between. I just have to get some ducks in a row and things that kind of go my way so that I can actually make it happen this year. But who knows? It's something that's on my radar. It's not off of that radar of trying to actually travel a little bit more within the U.S. And
yeah, that's definitely a good aspiration to have. I want to travel more coming up here in the near future as well.
Yeah, and before we kind of depart, I just thought about something. Speaking of travel, did you go to Las Vegas? We were talking about that the last one. Did you actually make that trip, or did something else happen?
No, we actually did not make it. So it was actually right after I talked with you, because it was December of 2021. We were supposed to go to Vegas for Christmas and New Year's, and there was a big spike. It was the Omicron, right? I think that was the one that came out, and there were a lot of flights that were getting canceled, and so we decided to play it safe, and we did not go. And our in-laws actually still went. Nick's parents still went, and they got COVID, and their flight got canceled, so they had to drive from Vegas to Florida with COVID. So I was like, well, we dodged a bullet, but I am sad that like the trip didn't get to happen. So
okay, well, yeah, no, that's yeah, for you and for Nick, it was a good thing that you didn't end up going. It's too bad for his parents.
Yeah, it was definitely unfortunate. I think they had a good time though, so it's like, I don't know, probably, I don't know if it was worth it, but you know.
Yeah, there's some clip about, I remember I pulled a clip from that interview, and you're talking about that you're gonna have to be like wheeled around like a little old lady from the lobbies in Vegas or something.
That would be, yeah, if somebody could just like wheel me around, I don't have to walk anywhere. Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, I don't remember what the context of the situation was, but that sounds like something.
Yeah, because I remember that, and then you're talking about like sometimes, you know, you might go to sleep at 11 and you need to be at work at 10, and you struggle to be ready. And
I definitely am not a great morning person. Although more recently, I've actually found that when I don't set an alarm, I do better somehow. Like I will wake up naturally at like maybe like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and usually I don't have to be at work till like 11, so it like kind of works out. I'm still working on it, but I'm trying to be better about waking up and like having to do things in the morning hours, because I in the past have not been great at that.
Well, and I can laugh because I didn't really see much of the morning today. So,
and that's okay. It's just who you are as a person.
Yeah, that's true. I have to accept a lot of things. Well, Leah, thank you so much for taking the time. And
of course,
we'll reconnect at another time, depending whenever it feels right, or if someone happens to put another comment in on one of my
it'll work out perfect.
Yeah, it'll be kind of jog my memory. Oh yeah, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And kind of check in. But say hi, Nick. Say hi to Nick for me.
I sure will.
And
thank
everybody,
you so much for having me again. I know obviously like it was kind of on the fly and everything like that. I'm glad that it happened and we were able to catch up.
Yeah, and everybody, don't forget to check out the podcast because you can listen to the episodes that are already out, and then you have a new one dropping tomorrow on Tuesday. So
we
5
have
episodes.
coming out tomorrow. That's correct. It is Honestly Same. You can also find us on Instagram at Honestly Same Pod, which has all of our links as well.
There you go. Have a great night, Leah. Thank you so much, and everybody in the chat, thank you for tuning in, and have a great night as well if it is night where you're at. Thanks, everybody.
Much, Mark.